going to start off by kind of doing an overview of SEC Media Days last week. Texas A&M spoke on Thursday. It was obviously head coach Mike Elko alongside senior guard Armaj junior linebacker Torrey York, and senior cornerback Will Lee, who are all, I just kind of wrote about that tonight with Aggies Wire, that, it's kind of great when you have all the core representatives outside of, quarterback Marcel Reed and a couple others that are really the players that are going to make or break your success in 2025. All three of those guys are NFL first or second or third round players going into the next cycle, and just fantastic human beings, awesome dudes, and great for us in the media to get kind of those quotes that get carried by their fan bases. Otherwise, we'll discuss that with Armaj, who's just an awesome dude. But yeah, it was an interesting day overall. I was going to go down there to Atlanta. I had some things that popped up during the week, so I didn't get to go. But our buddy Carter Carroll's at 24/7 Sports gig him, and Tony Catalina, they did a good job, asked a couple of good core questions. Some of them, when Mike Elko took the podium, some of them, you and I discussed off camera, like, look, I'm going to be honest to the Texas reporters asking about the rivalry game that's 4 months away. I don't really get that. I guess, look, if you're going to do those ask those type of questions just to get clicks or just kind of talk about, it's the Lone Star Showdown is back, which, well, we're in year 2 now. So, but look, that's not my job. I'm not going to judge them. They're doing what they feel as journalists to do. But I thought Elko handled that well, kind of saying
he definitely did.
We saw the clap back today.
Yes, we did.
In the I forget what it was. It was the high school coaches forum, Texas High School Coaches Forum. Yeah, and didn't get a lot of feed from that, so we'll go into that quickly. But finally, one of my fellow Aggie journalists put something out. He put out a short video, and I can't not laugh without talking about it. It's, Elko, who was asked by, I think, the same journalist who was there at SEC Media Days about, you think you're the flagship team in Texas, and Elko did not say that. He said that's what we're working towards. If you're Texas A&M and you're in the same conference with Texas, who is your rivalry, and in terms of recruiting battles and obviously trying to get to the college football playoff and trying to contend for championships and trying to be that, again, flagship program, everybody's working towards that, right? So it's like, what's he supposed to say? Like, no, all hail Texas? No, that's not what he's going to say. And I think that, I honestly think some in that fan base would just love them to be like, well, at least he's telling the truth, which both fan bases think that way. And that's just the fun of, Texas A&M and Texas.
That's what makes the competitiveness all the worthwhile.
Well, exactly. And that's why I do get, from that point of asking about the game, even though it's so far away, I can just say from our perspective, as guys who cover this team day in and day out, we're focused on the games at the start, the games in the middle. And if they have a good enough record at the end where that game really, really matters outside of just, owning the rivalry for that year, then I understand. Because if, what we expect, and I'll get to the rest in a minute, but what we expect is that both these teams are going to be very good in 2025. We expect that this game will mean a lot to potentially getting into the playoff or playoff positioning, especially for A&M, because we do believe that Texas is going to be a 10 or more win team. We speculate that A&M could be a 9 or possibly 10 win team based on health and based on how this offense gels and how the defense improves. But anyways, getting back to that, Elko basically said, he was asked again, like, about this flagship question. He said, look, I know some of the fans in Austin would love me to say this, but I didn't say that. He kind of did with a smirk and laughed it off. And I thought that was the most genuine example of Mike Elko as a man, as a coach, and as one of the best leaders in college football right now, especially in this whole NIL world where recruits want genuine people to play under. And that has nothing to do with Sarkisian at Texas or anybody else. I think Steve Sarkisian is a very genuine coach, and I think he really does care about that program and wants to win as much as A&M does. It's just him and Elko are very different. I think Elko's more relaxed fit, which I think is great, and Steve Sarkisian's more slim cut, business-like, not a lot of humor attached to it. It's more just like straightforward. This is what we're going to do. At least Elko has some humor to some of these things. And he did that. He was pretty straightforward with discussing, all the core members of this roster, going from obviously Marcel Reed praising his leadership, offseason improvement, Torian York being one of the leaders on this defense and this team in general, one of the best run defenders in the country. And then really he talked about Terry Bussey, I thought, which we can get into next. And he's now said that twice after speaking on Monday at the San Antonio Coaches Night. He's said, like, Terry Bussey, the reason why we made that decision to make him a full-time wide receiver is something that everybody should understand by now, is that when you have these versatile type of players where they can excel at either position on offense or defense, you have to hone in on that talent and you have to make a decision quickly. And Travis Hunter is a great example of that, right? He did play both positions at Colorado, which could be good or bad. We believe he's going to play wide receiver full time with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I think that would be the best option for that team and for him, because, you know, when you're playing both ways, it's like dealing with injuries as a weightlifter or any other sport where you have to kind of manage it, and you have to understand, you have to manage that tread, that constant work, and you really don't want to take a break or you can't, and your body just needs rest. And so for someone like Bussey, playing two ways, I think would be more detrimental to him. And like, I get that people want him to play as a kick returner, see time as a punt returner or something like that. But if he's somebody who at the start of the season becomes a great option for Marcel Reed, is one of the better separators, runs pristine routes, then just keep him as a wide receiver. And then when the defense takes field, keep him on the bench. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. When talking Terry Bussey, I think when A&M first brought him in back at the back end of that recruiting class back in 2020, I believe, the end of 2024, if I'm not mistaken, in February, that battle with LSU, you could see exactly why both programs wanted this kid. You've overviewed it before, where this is a kid who could play that Travis Hunter type of role where he could excel on both offense and defense. But with him having a full offseason, like we've talked about before, under Mike Elko and this strength and conditioning program as a full-time wide receiver, they are kind of projecting him to be that type of elevated playmaker that they want going into his basically redshirt freshman year or full-on sophomore year going into this next season. Now, what will that entail? Does that mean that they are going to utilize him more in that backfield like we saw glimpses of this past season? Time will tell, but I really do think that we saw those flashes of Terry Bussey last season, making a really, really fun catch along the sidelines you'll have to remind me which game, but you saw the flashes of him being a playmaker on that offensive side, and so did the staff. So we'll see when they start their training this next week, but I'm really, really excited to see the jump that Terry Bussey will take. And it's obviously apparent from SEC Media Days that Mike Elko and his staff are too. Yeah,
and that was, I think, against Texas. I think he made kind of a jump. It was like a jump pass type of ball that he I forget which corner he was going against. But again, just a high-end athlete, just one of those guys who I think the fan base is kind of just waiting to see him explode. And they saw it once, when he had that 65-yard run against McNeese and just showed off that speed. I mean, he's got another gear when he gets out in the open field. And so we talked about this a little bit, figuring out how to use him correctly. It's the same with Ruben Owens. It's, that Le'Veon, and we're going to get to that. He did, obviously Elko went on to obviously praise Le'Veon Moss's leadership, his final season, obviously nothing on the arrest. Elko kept it professional and just said, look, we're dealing with that in-house. We're not going to get into that, but I wouldn't expect anything to happen from that in that regard. But it did continue to prove that Le'Veon Moss is just so important to what they're trying to do in 2025, because he's going to be the lead back, which means that having that depth, and obviously he did mention, like, obviously Amari Daniels outside of Ruben Owens, EJ Smith as well. He said EJ Smith, who was kind of hampered with an injury last year as well, we didn't see that same player that we saw at Stanford, who he dealt with a lot of injuries there. Obviously the son of Hall of Famer Emmitt Smith, as all of us who are Cowboy fans know and love. It's just very fun to think, like, when you're getting a running back room that is completely healthy, all of those players offer something different. And even your fourth string guy was a starter at a Power 4 program. Look, you should not struggle on the ground then, because then that leads to the offensive line, which he continued to praise last week and on Monday, talking about, look, we've had, I believe on Monday during the coaches' night, it was the same as kind of what he said during SEC Media Days. This is the best and oldest group we've had at Texas A&M has had since the 2020 season. What do we all remember outside of the horrific Jimbo Fisher extension that led to the buyout? That season ended at, I believe it was 9-1. Obviously, COVID, there were a couple games canceled in between. This was a team that many believe should have made it to the playoff over Notre Dame, who got thrashed by Alabama in that game and went on to win the championship. I still remember that. But that O-line with quarterback Kellen Mond, I think, Devon Achane was still on that team. He was a younger player. One of the best run blocking O-lines I have seen in a decade plus. They all, like, half of those guys are still in the NFL today, a couple starting. This is a group that, compared to what they have now, we talked about this, I think, last week. There's NFL talent. Elko has started to really harp on that at every position from tackle to guard.
Yeah, he even said at SEC Media Days, he expects a fully, big jump and uptick in the NFL caliber player that they have on the roster and NFL draft picks this next season. The exact number is kind of eluding my mind right now, but you really need to have at least 10 plus draft picks in order to kind of make that jump towards what now is going to be an even tougher road to that championship game in January. So I'm excited to see, because I do believe that Elko is right in that you are going to see a really, really not only revamped backfield with now all of their feature backs healthy, but you're going to see a big uptick in people keying in on the run. And that's just going to open it up for Marcel Reed coming into this season.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because it's scheme related, but we were talking pre-show that, and we'll get to some of the quarterback rankings at the end of the show. But the reason why we're so high on Marcel Reed is because he had games, and I would say, to preface, A&M was not blown out of really any game outside of South Carolina, and I really wouldn't call Texas a blowout. I would call that the offense couldn't score points, and if they did, they would have won that game. That's what it was. But South Carolina came in the second half, really beat them on the ground, and that was after Le'Veon Moss was lost. And I think A&M just kind of got deflated in that way mentally, and they just kind of let South Carolina run all over them. That happens in football. We've seen it at every level where good teams just kind of falter, and then their opponent just kind of destroys them. But that's a good sign, right? That's a good sign for this team that was less talented last year, even more talented, and has more depth this year. And yeah, the schedule is tough on paper, fine. But at the same time, if, like you said, teams are going to be keying on the run because of the strengths they have, and obviously the O-line, if that O-line can just open up holes, those guys are going to just eat every down, it feels like. I mean, you got to remember that Le'Veon Moss behind the same line, which dealt with some injuries, especially in the interior, was averaging over 6.3 yards per carry. Okay, and then you had Maury Daniels, who just came up and would give you that nice burst, and one of the tougher runners, not as big, but when he finds a hole, it's going to be very hard to stop him at the next level. Now you have Ruben Owens back healthy, where, like we've said, how are you going to use him? Are you going to use him in the passing game more? Is he going to be split out wide? Or are we going to finally see him be that, attempt to be that 3-down back when given those guys a rest? But you got to figure that out, right? And then EJ Smith obviously is more of an Maury Daniels type of player that if you need him, he's ready to go. So that's going to open up the passing game for Marcel Reed, because they're going to key on the run a lot, and you're going to have Casey Concepcion, Mario Craver, Terry Bussey, Isaiah Williams, Ashton Bethel-Roman, who are all much better separators, in my opinion, than what the group they had last year. And obviously, Terry Bussey was a part of that, but he was young. He didn't really know how to play wide receiver at the college level yet. We expect him to take that jump like we were just previously talking about. And so when you have that, again, Marcel has already shown accuracy. He's got to work on some ball placement stuff, which we believe he's been doing this summer. And yeah, he's got to throw that deep ball. He's got to connect on some of those, because Colin Klein's offense is about short pass, run the ball, and then deep shots when they're open. So it's a great offense when it works. And I believe they got the quarterback to do it, but it all starts up front. And that's why I think Elko is allowed to be very positive this offseason. We see coaches all the time think they have the best team. But no, he has a legitimate reason to praise this group and go, look, this is why we're confident. This is why we have high expectations.
Yeah, definitely high expectations for this run game going into this next season. I mean, can you have another game like you had last year against Missouri where you see these explosions from Le'Veon Moss? You see Amari Daniels rush it in for 2 touchdowns that game. I really do think that this next season you could see stuff like that where you are just, the run is happening and yet you can't stop it. That's the thing I really, really am wanting to see from this A&M offense going forward.